Good evening, and welcome along to Rob and Elliott tonight here on NVTV. Coming up on the show this week, I'll be chatting to gardening expert Huw Richards. We'll have live music in the studio from Randall Stephen Hall. Author Sue Divin will also be with us, telling us about her new novel, and we'll find out about this year's AVA Music Festival. So keep it right here on NVTV. But starting us off on the show this evening, I'm going to talk about this book, which actually matches the jacket tonight. How good is that? It's the latest book from Niraj Kapur. It's called Lessons Learned from Divorce, Dating and Falling in Love Again. Let's talk to the man himself. How are you?
Robin, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to Belfast. I believe it's nearly 30 years you've been away.
That's correct. I was born and grew up here, and then at the age of 18, I wanted to be the first Indian Bon Jovi. Just to be clear, I had hair and a six-pack back then. It didn't look like this.
And how did you get with that? How far did you get?
I spent 3 years stacking shelves in a place. It used to be called Stewart's Supermarket.
I remember it.
Yep, so I stacked shelves there during the day. Then I realised I could get paid more at night time, so I did night shift work. And back in those days, I started doing Sunday work because it was double time. So I worked day and night for 3 years, saved up enough money to hire some musicians. I played the drums myself, the piano, got all these demo tapes, not even CDs, demo tapes. And I flew to England, to Epic and Polygram and Warner Brothers and Virgin to say, look, I'm the next Indian Bon Jovi. You guys should really hire me.
And what happened?
Not a single person was interested. Because I mean, it's one of these things. I'm a decent songwriter.
Right. But
to be a lead singer, you got to have a certain charisma, sex appeal, and a good voice.
Yeah. I
didn't really have any of those three, but nobody told me, you know.
So is the music still out there? Is it still online somewhere?
Thank goodness no. Now and again when my friends get drunk, they like to listen to my cassette tapes just for a laugh to see how cheesy, and it really was cheesy, 1980s kind of rock pop music, and I really mean cheesy.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things in life, I'm glad I had the courage to do it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people spend their life thinking, I wish I'd done that.
So what was the turning point then when you went, no, I'm going to leave this behind me, and business, that's the way I'm going to go?
Well, I have very conservative Indian parents,
right, yeah.
who are, my father's a high achiever. And when you have a son who's on the dole for a year because he's embarrassed and can't really come back home, he flew over and said, look, you got to get a job, you got to sort this out. And because I had no degree, because all I wanted to do was be a rock star. So the only job I could get was to be a builder,
right,
or to work in sales in an office. And I thought, I don't like the cold. I grew up in Northern Ireland, I do not like the cold. So I worked in an office in sales and publishing in Soho, and spent 10 years working in the magazine sector, which was something I reluctantly did, but became a dream come true because I learned about business, I learned about sales, I learned about having female bosses, I learned all these great skills for over 10 years. It was quite incredible, actually.
And then you'd go on to take those skills that you learned, and you worked with some, amazing kind of worldwide companies, didn't you?
It was incredible. I worked for FTSE 100 companies. I traveled the world for 5 years, and I learned so much about people. But one thing that always surprised me was no matter who I met, no matter where they were from, no matter how well they spoke or didn't speak English, nobody could really sell.
Right,
and so the first book was called Everybody Works in Sales, and that became a bestseller, and that gave me the encouragement to continue and set my own business up. And that's what I did until lockdown. And then lockdown, my client said, sorry, we have no money left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I still have a mortgage to pay.
Yeah.
I've just been divorced after 21 years, and my daughter's at university. So it was a bit of a panic, actually. And I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And being in lockdown all alone was absolutely terrifying. And I didn't cope after the divorce. I didn't cope being alone. And God bless my parents. I said, look, put whatever you have in storage, come back home and spend 3 or 6 months just recovering. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful they did that. And those 6 months, having mum's home cooked food, and dad introduced me to stoicism and God, and just give me money to join the gym, simple stuff like that, and to get my life back together. And it was actually quite wonderful. And those 6 months have become almost 3 years, and I'm really happy and settled back in Northern Ireland, which I never thought I would be, you know?
You got the book out as well at the moment, which is quite an unusual concept. It's more than just a business help book. It's your life through this as well. And there's a great amount of humour in it too, isn't there?
Thank you. I've been really honoured by the reviews and the comments people have made. I wanted to write a business book, but how do you say something that hasn't been said before?
Yeah.
How do I say anything that's better than anybody who went to Harvard or Cambridge? So the only way to do that is through storytelling, because storytelling is how people connect.
Yeah.
And so by telling my story, it's quite interesting. A lot of the things I found frustrating, like online dating, people found hilarious.
Yeah.
A lot of things I went through, like divorce, people understand divorce and relationship breakups, and I'm just honoured people have just got it and really enjoyed it, you know.
So what about the online dating? I mean, how bad was that? I mean, how bad are things out there?
Imagine the worst thing possible and then just multiply it by 10. That's online dating in Northern Ireland. It really is.
And did you actually get to the point where you went dating with people? Because I know people who just spend their life and they talk to people online, but the dates never happen, or they get stood up at the last minute. Or
I'm a person of action.
Yeah.
I don't like to sit there and wait things to happen, because I generally believe nothing happens unless you take action.
Yeah.
I did meet a number of women who were about 10 years older than their profile, which surprised me. I met a number of women who were married. That surprised me. I met a lot of people who just weren't ready for dating at all.
Right,
And shouldn't have been
yes.
online dating in the first place, because you have to go through a healing process after a relationship breakup or a divorce. It's quite a profound thing to happen to you in life, and you need to spend that time in self-care and taking good care of you before you get back out there.
I've just come to chapter 15 in your book. Women in Northern Ireland always ask what religion you are.
Yeah, that's the first thing they ask me. Every single person, like, how are you? No. What religion are you? If they don't ask you that, they ask you what school you went to.
Yeah.
So they can work out what religion you are. Yes, that happened a lot, and it surprised me.
Exactly, yeah. Where were you born? Yeah, there's another one to find out that as well. But you would probably get all the time as well.
I do get it all the time, but it was like, I give them the worst answer. I grew up in Antrim. And when you tell people you grew up in Antrim, they just make this face like they're constipated, like, Antrim? Really? You live in Antrim? You know, people have this feeling about Antrim, which unfortunately is very true. But yes, they have this feeling about Antrim. Yeah.
What I love about the book as well is the little boxes at the end of each chapter where you do the lessons learned bit.
That's very important, because as a coach, it's not good enough for me to teach you something. You have to take action. That is how you progress, and it's how you have success in life. So for me, that was absolutely vital. I didn't want people reading it going, oh, that was good, and turning the page.
Yeah.
I want them to just stop for a moment, remind them what they'd learned, and then take action going forward.
A lot of help with mental health in the book as well. Lots of good advice, isn't there?
That's so important, because when you go through any painful relationship breakout, there's a process like of healing, and there's a process of regrowth, where you have to rebuild your life again, and taking care of your mental health is key.
Yeah.
And it's not just going for walks in nature, which is very nice. It's not just taking a break from your phone, which is very nice. It's doing things like giving to charity. It's like eating better.
Yeah.
It's like taking care of yourself. It's like spending more time with family and friends face to face, not over the phone or on FaceTime, but actually face to face. And you add up all these little things together, and they have a profound difference in your mental health.
Yeah. The business side of the book as well, of course, business changes all the time, and when you're looking after your business, it's all online now. You have to be an online social media expert now as well, don't you?
It helps massively. LinkedIn, I'm very lucky. A year and a half ago, by telling all my stories about online dating and being stood up and what it was like, and seeing my ex-wife fall in love very quickly after the divorce. That was, dealing with all these sort of changes to your lifestyle. Writing about that on LinkedIn, I was truly honoured. They gave me a Top Voice of the Year award, which you give only to 10 people in the world. Excellent. And 2 people in the UK got this, and nobody in Ireland has ever received this. So I was really honoured to receive this award. And that made a big difference.
Yeah.
And so much of my business is online, because you can connect with people all over the world. It's not just Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
I meet people in Canada, in America, in Australia, in the Middle East. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that for me is the one great joy of the online world.
Brilliant. Book's out now. How do we get it?
From Amazon, just look up Business Growth, Lessons Learned from Dating, Divorce and Falling in Love Again. All
right, well, before you go, would you like to read a little extract from
I
the
would
book?
love to do that, thank you.
Brilliant. There we go. In the meantime, thank you so much for coming in and reading an extract from his book. Here's Niraj Kapur.
When I woke up, I checked my phone. Nobody from England asked how I was settling into Northern Ireland. That was a shame. I had breakfast with Mum and Dad. It was so lovely to have people to talk to in the house again after spending so many months in lockdown living alone. What are your plans, Dad asked. I don't know. I really don't. Well, I have something next door for you, Dad said, while he continued eating his toast and marmalade like Paddington the Bear. Dad, something for me next door? Please tell me it's not another arranged marriage. I already had one. I can't do another one. My parents were confused. They never understood my sarcasm. Dad had brought me next door, and a canny brought me a work desk and a comfy desk. There were notepads, pens, and colourful post-it notes on my desk, along with some books on God. Rick Warren's What on Earth Am I Here For? And several books by the Indian philosopher J.P. Vaswani. I do believe there's a God who created the earth, although I'm not quite sure why he allows so many bad things to happen. See, whenever you're in pain in life, you often think you're the only one who's suffering at the time. But other people have gone through what you've gone through, and there's no shame in asking for help. I had to rebuild my life again, and I figured a therapist would be the best way to start that. So I arrived at the therapist's house, which had been converted into a workspace. I paid for 1 hour, and I got ready to heal.
Okay, next up on the show this evening, we're talking gardening. So from stress relief to socialising and even helping to keep costs down to those who grow their own fruit and vegetables, gardening can have many benefits. Huw Richards is a gardening expert and influencer. He joins us to share his tips and tricks for those planning on going on a gardening adventure. Huw, how are you today?
I am very good, thank you.
So we're talking gardening this evening. I think since COVID, more and more of us have got into gardening now, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. And research by Readly magazine and newspaper backs it up. 67%, 2/3 of Brits looking at tending their garden and plants this year. And so, yeah, it's great to see that appeal.
And of course, there's loads of great benefits to getting out there into the garden. Things like stress relief.
Yes, unless you have hostas and slugs.
So what about people who do have those things happening in their garden at the minute? How do we get rid of those things then?
The main thing with that's nice about gardening in terms of combating things is often you can, if there's one particular pest that you just like slugs that you just can't deal with, you can grow plants that slugs just aren't interested in, especially a lot more of the perennials or the ornamentals. A nice way of also getting about it is you can grow the plants on to be slightly bigger in pots and then transplant them outside, because slugs like the really young tender seedlings. So when they're kind of semi-mature, even if they get a bit of damage, you can at least see and make adjustments. So things like cutting up little bits of bramble to make little spiky fences around your seedlings, things like that helps.
Now, what about growing your own fruit and veg? I would imagine with the cost of living and stuff at the minute, more and more people are trying to do this. Is it easy enough to do?
It is, but the trick is to actually be a little bit clever with what you grow. Things like potatoes, they're great. They're a bulk crop. But if you are buying compost for them, etc., the cost of potatoes is pretty cheap still. What you want to do is look at those high value kind of crops that actually cost quite a bit, but it's so easy to grow. For example, any kind of salad. So from this point in the year all the way through to December, I never need to buy any salad from the shop. A packet of salad from the shop, from the money that you spend for that, maybe £1 or £1 or £2. If you spend that on lettuce seeds and you succession plant a few of those seeds every 2 weeks, you'll have more lettuce than you can deal with for the rest of the growing season. Also things like herbs as well. Herbs in a small space, they pack so much flavour, they make a real difference to the cooking that you do at home. So it's just about being a little bit clever with how you choose it, and then you build up from there.
Now, what about somebody like me who's a beginner? The weather is getting better. We're thinking about getting out there into the garden as maybe a hobby. So what kind of tips could you give me for starting off then?
The first thing is to try and get that first harvest under your belt. And so what I actually recommend is growing pea shoots. So you just get some peas, put them in a pot of compost, kind of a centimetre or 2 of compost over the top, keep it watered. In 2 weeks, you'll be harvesting pea shoots that taste delicious, just like peas. And then you've got that confidence under the belt. And then it's about choosing the things that you really like eating, because if you like eating it, you're going to want to look after it. So if you're not a fan of turnips, don't grow turnips. Grow something that you enjoy eating. Those are kind of like the 2 tips I'd give to beginners in terms of strategy for approaching it.
So what about beginners starting off with like a small bed in the garden or a small patch to start off with?
Then you can have a little bit more fun if you've got a little bit more space. So with a bed, you can you can treat a bed like its own mini garden. So you could have like a row of different herbs like basil, parsley, dill, etc. You could have a row of salads. You could grow some outdoor tomatoes. There's a few different varieties that are suitable for outdoors, especially cherry tomatoes. They ripen quicker than, say, salad or beefsteak. And again, it's just choosing the things that brings you joy. I always want to put a pop of colour, be it a borage plant or a nasturtium that's cascading down, brings in the pollinators.
So Huw, where did your love for start then?
From my dad. He got me into it at the age of 3. So yeah, I've got 21 years of gardening experience in a sense. But yeah, I was just captivated that you could plant a little tiny seed and it would grow into this big plant. It provided tasty food. I mean, how can that not capture you?
And then, of course, the whole YouTube thing took off. Did you ever imagine it was going to become that big?
No, because it was just a friend of mine was doing some gaming videos on YouTube when I was 12, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then I thought, oh, I'll do gardening, so I'm not treading on his toes. And I kind of never really looked back. I didn't know what I was doing. If you want a laugh, all of my old videos are back. They're still on. So you can watch me before my voice broke. Welcome back to the garden. You know, they're still there. If you want to laugh, go watch my old videos.
And what about plans for the future then? Any more gardening books or any big projects coming up?
Well, I'm working on a couple of books at the moment. One for spring next year, which is very much based around, not say too much, but it's very much based around saving money in the garden, but also actually feeding yourself from a small space. It's the most exciting project I've undertaken, and it's what I'm going to be doing all of this afternoon. It's what I was doing all evening last night. So yeah, that's certainly very exciting.
And if people want some more information on any of the advice that you've given us on the show, where can they go to for that?
Go to my YouTube channel, but also there's the app Readly, which has a little offer for everyone. So there's gardening magazines on there, BBC Gardener's World, Kitchen Garden, etc. 2 months unlimited reading, just in time for this growing season. Head to readly.com/gardening and harvest your knowledge and inspiration from those articles.
Well, we'll check that out. Huw, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You too. All the best. See you.
Okay, time for some live music in the NVTV studios, and it's great to have Randall Stephen Hall back with us. Here he is.
There's a horse in the moonlight, and he's looking so free, and he runs with the stars, love, though he's caught in a field, and he doesn't need pockets, 'cause he carries no shame, and he's coming to see me, though he knows not my name. Oh, oh, we're tired and torn, we are rough round the edge, my belt I have tightened like the thorn in the hedge, but this Donegal pony doesn't care who I am, so I pick up some grass now I just hold out my hand. By the moon she is rising, and she's looking so fine, like a bride with no bridegroom. How she wish she was mine. Oh, Kathy, come home now. I don't care what you say. Like a Donegal pony, won't you come stroke my head? Like a Donegal pony, won't you come stroke my head?
So there we go with a track called The Donegal Pony. That's Randall Stephen Hall, and I'm pleased to say the man himself joins us in the studio. How are you today?
I'm not too bad, Robin.
Good to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. The years. And yet we both look so well.
We do, exactly. Yeah, indeed. Tell me about that song. That's from the new album, isn't it?
Donegal Pony, yeah. I wrote it around 2017. And Anne and I would sometimes escape up to Donegal. My dad was actually born in Milford. I just like it as a place. And we like walking on the beaches and getting wee cups of coffee and, you know.
So the new album then, it's all kind of stories, a lot of stories about your family as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Red Man Rua is just a collection of things. The way I write songs, I don't go, I'm going to write a song about this. They tend to just turn up.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit like a man waiting at a train station. I never know what train's going to turn up or who's going to be on it. There's a song called These Photographs, and that's really about my dad being born in Milford, and his sister was born in Milford, my Aunt Aideen, and my granny was from Berra in County Tyrone, and her husband, my grandfather, he worked for the Northern Bank. For a while they lived in Milford, and then for another time they lived in Bray, outside Dublin.
Yeah.
So the song talks about my Aunt Aideen learning to swim on the, beside the sea, and my dad playing in the Dublin Fesh.
Yeah.
Which some people, considering my background, might have gone, and how did that happen, Stephen?
Yeah.
So I like introducing these ideas into the songs that maybe contradict perceptions. So that's one song, and then there's another song called The Rust in the Blood.
Yeah. My
great-great-grandfather joined the British Army from Westmeath in Dublin in 1828, and in the next 22 years, although he was originally stationed at the Curragh, he ended up spending 7 years in Cape Colony, which was like pre-South Africa. He then was in India during the time of the Indian Mutiny, around 1857, 58. And then he came back and he worked as a recruiting sergeant.
Right.
Like some well-known folk songs, like one that Paul Brady does.
Yeah.
Then he spent about 9 years with his wife out in Canada, again still in the army. He'd been a sergeant for a long time and he became a quartermaster before he left the army in 1870, and he came back and he lived in Kilkenny.
Okay, yeah.
And I never understood why I liked Smithwick's. until I visited Kilkenny one
Right,
day.
yes, yeah.
And they lived in a place called Greenbridge Street that faces the Smithwick's Brewery.
Right, okay.
So there you go.
Brilliant.
Mystery solved.
Was there always music in your family? Is that where your love of music came from?
My dad wasn't doing too much musically when I was growing up. My mum sang in a number of choirs. She was from Coleraine.
Okay.
She sang in a choir called I think it was called the Coleraine Linnets.
Mm-hmm. So
So there was music around and an appreciation for music, but there was no piano in a corner or anything like that. One of the main things I grew up with was a record player.
Yeah.
My Aunt Ruby bought us a Dansette mono.
wow.
I'm sure everyone's
Everyone has one of those.
experienced it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we had relations in America. She came back with, this is about 1968, The Temptations' Greatest Hits,
Yeah.
and a single, the theme from Hawaii 5-0.
Oh, brilliant.
And that was the
Yeah.
beginning of our
Yeah.
record collection. But I spent a long time in what we called the wee room, listening to the record player.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I learned how to harmonize. In the days when people, when you were listening, you weren't checking your watch or
Yeah.
your phone. You were actually engaged with the music.
Art as well was a big part of your life, and we see examples here of your
Yeah.
illustrations, the books that you've produced over the years and stuff.
My brother's called Granville, sadly not here anymore, and he was 6 years older than me. And he would often, sometimes we would get our hair cut in a hairdresser's that may still be here, I'm not sure, in Castle Street, called the Executive Hairdressers.
Wow.
And in those days, there were like photographs of George Best
Yeah.
with sideburns. And over time, you watched the helpers that were brushing all the hair off the floor gradually becoming the hairdressers.
Yes.
Over a period of years. And then we'd go to Smithfields, the real Smithfields, and he'd go to the original version of Harry Hall's, and he would buy comics there,
Right, yeah.
Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, all that stuff. And that had a big effect on me visually.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have described myself as a strong reader in those days,
Yeah.
but I just soaked up all the
Yeah.
imagery. I love dynamic figures.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
And you can see them. I was flicking through the Giant's Causeway book there, and I mean, there's a lot of that in the book, isn't there?
yeah. I like to try and dramatize what's going on,
Yeah.
and then that book, I started to get little requests to go into schools,
Yeah.
but for someone like me, I was very briefly a man with one story.
Yeah.
Like real storytellers or traditional storytellers, they can walk into a room with just, their pipe tobacco in their
Yes.
pocket.
Yeah.
And that's just the women. So I had to begin to learn the craft. How would I do this? So I started to project imagery onto walls. I would use my wee hand drum. I would draw for them and make up silly poems, and as a way of stimulating them to be creative themselves,
Yeah.
And also maybe introduce like wee ideas. I can remember in earlier times you would have done events where two different schools that would normally not have any contact with each other would come together. And I remember doing a session on the Cliftonville Road, and there was a wee boy there, and he was called William, and I think he had red hair. He was only about this size, and he was sitting in the front row, and we were talking about names, and in the wee book here I talk about the connection between names, and I said to him, William, Liam is just William with a what taken off, and he sort of looked at me.
Yeah.
But I know I'd made the point.
Yes. Yeah.
Or things like the word for yellow in Irish is boy, but that's where you get the name Boyd from.
Right. Okay.
Originally it meant yellow-haired.
Wow.
And I've yet to meet a yellow-haired Boyd. They all have dark hair.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
how that happened, I have no
Indeed,
idea.
Yeah.
But I love all these little, White Park Bay has a thing called singing sand. When you walk on it, it makes a funny squeaky sound. And all these things are like little grains of singing sand.
Yeah.
They're singing something to you about information you may not have encountered yet. And I always think they can change the perception in some ways.
We could talk about this all day.
We could.
But they're telling me to get you on to another song now.
Right.
This time we're going to leave the guitar behind, aren't we? We're going for the drum this time, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, drumming is a great tradition here, you know. But ironically, the drum that I'm going to use is a Kenyan hand drum.
Right.
And there was a time when there were more charity shops in Belfast that sold items from Africa. And when our daughters were young, we would go into some of these shops, and the girls never wanted me to go into the corner that had the drums and the shakers. No, Daddy, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And anyway, Anne knew that I really like stuff like that. So at some point, and it could be well over 20 years ago, I was given this drum as I think it was a Father's Day present. And then I started over time to use it in workshops.
Tell us about the song you're going to play. There's an interesting story behind this.
There's an interesting story that we're going to travel back in time briefly to 1603 with the death of Queen Elizabeth, and we're going to change location. We're going to move to the borders between England and Scotland. And in that land, which at the time was very troubled, lived many clans. With, do you want me to mention some of the names?
Yeah, give us some of the names.
Yeah, some of the biggest clans were Graham, Armstrong, and one you might be familiar with, Elliott.
Really?
Elliott, yeah.
Wow.
And there would have been other names like Irvine, Kerr, Hall, Robson, Huddlestone, many hundreds of names. And I think where Hall's concerned, there was a line that said, "Never turn your back on a Hall."
Okay,
You know,
right, yeah.
something like that. Anyway, a lot of these people could be quite violent.
Right.
They were excellent horsemen. They rode horses, sometimes they were called hobblers, but they were also called bog trotters. They could disappear into the mist. Their main agenda was to take stuff from you. So they developed this great reputation as being, I was going to say horse smugglers, that's totally wrong. Horse thieves, sheep rustlers, cow rustlers. They were very much involved in murder, extortion, racketeering. A lot of activities that you might go, this sounds a bit familiar.
Yeah.
Anyway, King James, who was the next in line, decided he wanted to rid himself of this problem between the borders because he wanted to unite the whole country. In fact, he was the first guy that wanted to introduce the word United Kingdom.
Right, okay.
Okay, and he carried out a process that was described at the time as the pacification of the borders. That was a real euphemism and incredibly violent. It involved executions, the destruction of communities, the eviction of people. Some people ended up as soldiers fighting in religious wars in the Netherlands and also Belgium. But many were either persuaded or brought here by force and essentially exiled from the borders between England and Scotland to the northeast of Ireland, but also including aspects of Donegal, Cavan and Monaghan and Fermanagh.
Yeah, brilliant. In the meantime, thank you for coming in, and the best of luck with the new album as well.
Yeah, and good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you. So here he is with his drum in hand. Here's Randall Stephen Hall.
Down the Silken Valley we wend our merry way. The jangle of the stirrup, the burning of the hay, the rattle of the swords now, the armour we have on. The wind blows off the hillside as we ride to meet the dawn. Tiddly tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now. The river and the gale, we're fit to trod the land how, we're fit to take your life. Like Vikings up on horseback, take care your lovely wife. We leap across the borders, and now we cross the sea. King James, he wants to hang us, but in Ireland we are free. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay-ay. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now, boys. Oh, tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now. The river and the gale. Ha! Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay, lo. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay, la. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay, lo. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay, la. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay-ay. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now, boys. Oh, tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now. The river and the gale. It's hard to change our ways now, 300 years or more. Sent to farm in Ireland, or King James as warrior. The moon is on the moorland, we know the way to go. Through the misty sunlight, her riding through the snow. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay-ay. Tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now, boys. Oh, tiddly-ay, tiddly-ay now. The river and the gale. The river and the gale. Oh, oh, oh.
Some fabulous live music there from Randall Stephen Hall. Right, let's meet my next guest. She's the finalist in this year's KPMG Children's Books Ireland Awards for her second young adult novel, which is called Truth Be Told. And I'm pleased to say that Sue Divin joins us in the studio. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the nomination. What does this mean to you to be in such a big competition then?
Well, it's fantastic, but I mean, mainly what competitions do is they give the book profile.
Yeah.
And what you want is for people to read the book, for people to know about the book, and for people to enjoy it and interact with it.
Excellent. So tell us about the book. What's the main story then behind it?
So, Truth Be Told is really like a Parent Trap meets Derry Girls, if you like.
Wow.
So, it's my writing is for young adults, but it's also read by a lot of adults. So, it's suitable for teens primarily, and it's always set in Northern Ireland today, as opposed to writing in the past. So, in Truth Be Told, as you can see on the cover, there's two girls, Tara and Faith, who look very similar, but are from completely different identities in Northern Ireland. One's Derry-based, one's from rural Armagh. And the premise is they meet on a cross-community youth residential when they're 16 for the first time and discover they look virtually identical. So that sort of brings the question, are they connected? And that unfolds a quest. Really what it's digging into though is the lesser told stories of Northern Ireland and a lot of the societal big issues about truth and forgiveness and how we deal with the legacy of the past in today's generation, that peace generation if you like.
And that's something big that you've worked on for quite some time, the whole peace and reconciliation side of things, haven't you?
Absolutely. Well, my day job is in that field of peace and reconciliation, and I've worked in that for about 16 years, but the writing has been something that I've only really engaged in since about 2016.
So the plan wasn't always to be a writer then?
Well, it probably was at one point, but when I was at school, you didn't know how to find out how to be a writer very easily, so I went a completely different route, and I'm glad I did as well.
Yeah.
I think it brings more life experience to put into the book, you know,
yeah.
and to make these stories really resonate with young adults who feel seen in literature in Northern Ireland through these books, and also wider afield. You know, people are using these books internationally to actually learn about Northern Ireland now.
And when you set something in Derry, do you think because the world knows about Derry girls, this is helping now?
Absolutely. We sold the Georgian translation rights to Guard Your Heart on the premise that they knew Derry girls, so it definitely helps, I can tell you that. Although I think it's a slightly different thing as well, but that dry wit, the banter of finding the universality of stuff in the darkness and finding the comedic in the darkness is very much something that's in these. You know, these are books that should make you laugh as well as think, you know. And
I always say Derry's one of my favourite cities. I love getting up there because there's so much music and life to it, isn't there?
Oh, it's a fantastic place to live. And I mean, I exploit all of that. I mean, the midpoint in Truth Be Told is set during Halloween. You know, why wouldn't you, sort of thing? So, I mean, the Clipper Festival appears in Guard Your Heart. All those big events, the music, the culture, you tap into that as the backdrops for how you set the stories in the books.
So as an author, how hard was it then to get your first book published?
Well, I actually got my breakthrough competition route with the Irish Writers' Centre. They run a novel fair every year, which is a bit like a Dragon's Den meets speed dating kind of stuff for aspiring novelists. And I got the break there, got picked up with an agent, and then ultimately Macmillan published both the books. Wow. So I'm a big advocate of that. I didn't have a lot of background in writing, but obviously, you know, there comes with the kind of humility of needing to understand, although I wrote it completely on a whim, it was a lot of hard work. And once I realised I had something, then I had to go and learn the ropes of the industry and how to self-edit and make it good enough to compete, because it's a very competitive industry.
What about in your school days? Were you always writing? Were you good at English and stuff?
I wrote horrendous poetry when I was at school. Actually, one of the poems is in Guard Your Heart, as if it was written by the teenage girl Iona that's in that book. Sort of a homage to my earlier self. I used to be a singer-songwriter as well,
really?
And I guess the creativity kind of went into that, and ultimately it's shifted from lyrics straight into just narrative of what I write now.
You mentioned Derry Girls, of course, one of the big things, but when we think of Derry in recent times as well, we have to think about Lyra McKee as well, don't we? Yeah,
well, actually I was editing in the final edits of Guard Your Heart at the point in time that Lyra McKee was shot, and there's some of the scenes in Guard Your Heart coincidentally set in Cregan. Aidan, the lead character in Guard Your Heart, is from Cregan, and it was suddenly like, I don't know if I can work on this anymore. The impact was so real, because the issues that are in the books are those types of big issues for society in Northern Ireland. You know, this one, Truth Be Told, is set in 2019 in autumn in the context of no government at Stormont for 3 years, and all the big issues that were on the table, but told through the eyes of young people today. And I think particularly when Lyra was shot, it impacted a lot of people and impacted how we do piecework as well.
What about young people these days? Are they reading books?
Well, absolutely, yes. I think you have to be aware that young people absorb story in so many different forms. Some will see it in the movies, some will read it in books, others will interact with it in school. But certainly of the young people that I see, and the competitions like the Children's Book Awards, it's great because you get to go and visit young people in schools. I've been in schools in Banbridge, Strabane, Limavady, Derry, Belfast, you know, talking to young people about writing and reading and about the books, and they do engage, they are interested.
Brilliant. So when does the competition take place? When do we know who wins?
I think it's just in a couple of weeks' time, but the junior juries, who are the ones in the schools, have been voting for the books now. So in a couple of weeks in Dublin, the results will be announced.
Are you working on something new at the minute? Is there a book in the pipeline?
Yes, I am indeed. It's provisionally called I Once Was Lost, which is a line that might lead you into other things. And again, it's set in the Northwest, but maybe with a cross-border dynamic and a Foster kind of scenario, maybe slightly less political and more on the social side and border issues and stuff.
Sounds amazing. The best of luck with that, and good luck with the competition as well. Good to see you.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay, time now for our What's On guide, and this week we start in Larne, and why not get yourself down there on Saturday night, the 20th of May, for for the Friends Goodwill Festival. It's going to be a fabulous gig featuring Curtis Staggers, Brian Kennedy, Mary Coughlin, and I'll be hosting that as well. So I see you in Larne this Saturday night. Also this weekend, if you fancy doing something a little bit different to coincide with the fabulous musical Good Vibrations, which has been running at the Grand Opera House this week, why not try one of the punk walking tours of Belfast with the fabulous Dolores Vischer. I did it last week, and there's 2 walking tours this Saturday, one at 10:30 and one at 4:30 in the afternoon. And for more information and to book your tickets for that, just check out the website, which is creativetoursbelfast.com. Now, glam rock legends Steel Panther are back and returning to the Ulster Hall here in Belfast on the 25th of May. And Steel Panther are currently embarking on a massive world tour to celebrate their latest release, 1987, On the Prowl World Tour. So check them out, the Ulster Hall here in Belfast on the 25th of May. Now, also on that night, Moving on Music are delighted to welcome the one and only Richard Dawson back to Belfast for a special solo show at the Belfast Empire Music Hall, featuring songs from his new album, The Ruby Chord, alongside work from his incredible back catalogue. Now, Antrim and Newtonabbey Borough Council and the Lough Neagh Partnership are hosting a couple of special jazzy gin events in County Antrim. There's one that took place last Saturday, and the next one takes place on Saturday, May the 27th at Antrim Castle Gardens. For more details and how to book your tickets, just head to the website, which is www.jazzygin.com. Now, in 2024, the Stranglers, one of the most iconic and influential bands in British music history, are celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they've just announced dates in Belfast's Ulster Hall and the 3 Olympia in Dublin. And tickets went on sale earlier on today from ticketmaster.ie, and you can catch the Stranglers at the Ulster Hall in Belfast on the 11th of March next year, and also in Dublin at the 3 Olympia on the 12th of March. And finally, for now, if you want to catch a movie in cinemas this weekend, why not try Fast X? It's an action-adventure, and over many missions and against impossible odds, Dom Toretto and his family have outsmarted and outdriven every foe in their path. And now they must confront the most lethal opponent they've ever faced. And fueled by revenge, a terrifying threat emerges from the shadows of the past to shatter Dom's world and destroy everything and everyone he loves. Here's a clip.
Punch it!
Yeah, we'd already be there if Roman wasn't driving Ford Knox on wheels.
You see me shining, baby? We're locked inside. It's a trap. That's a bomb. All right, dorks, what are we blowing up? What? The Vatican? Wow, you guys are going to hell.
Okay, staying with the What's On stuff, and the AVA Festival is back in Belfast on the famous historic Titanic Slipways. It runs between the 2nd and the 4th of June. Sarah McBriar is the brains behind it, and I'm pleased to say she joins us in the studio. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So it's that exciting time of year again, time for a great festival in Belfast, and I believe there's going to be something like 10,000 people coming to see a whole lot of acts.
Yeah, 10,000 people, 2 days, and it's in 2 weeks, so it's all hands to the deck at the minute.
So tell us the idea behind this festival. How did all this come about then?
So it started 9 years ago. I've been working on lots of other festivals throughout sort of a 5-year period, and I felt that Northern Ireland needed a more sort of creative, multi-stage festival that booked lots of different acts as opposed to sort of one big headline act across a number of different days. So it was taking that idea and really just growing it from the ground up. We started actually across the road at T13 in the old shipping warehouses, and that was a 2-stage festival then, one day, and then just every year it's just grown and grown and grown, and now it's no longer a baby anymore. It's full-blown teenager now.
And it's more than just music, because the audiovisual side of things is just fabulous as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of what we do. AVA stands for Audiovisual Arts, so we work with visual artists on both bespoke shows with artists and then also just across our main stage. Last year was the first year we did Titanic Slipways, and we built this huge, like, I mean, it almost looks like a huge TV screen. It's like this big AV spectacular.
Yeah.
And we had sort of artists come through with their own shows, and then we also brought on an amazingly talented team called Algorithm that create like lots of sort of bespoke shows as well for the festival. So and then we've actually launched a new stage called the Pump House.
Okay.
And that's more lighting and more visual led. So Over Mono, who's a sort of big electronic duo, they're doing their live show, which is going to be amazing. They're on that stage.
Last year it was streamed as well to something like 15 million people, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we were the first to bring Boiler Room 9 years ago to Belfast, and it's funny because at the time when I was pitching to them, so they're an online broadcaster, at the time when I was pitching to them, they were going all over the world, you know, but they were based in London. I said, why aren't you coming over to Belfast? And they were like, oh, you know, there's not the right opportunity or whatever. And I said, okay, well, I can give you the best Northern Irish and Southern Irish acts, and I can put you underneath the Harlan and Wolff crane, and I don't think you're going to get a better backdrop than that. So they couldn't say no, and then that's it. They came and they've never gone, and we're one of the few festivals now that they've done every single year for 9 years, and it's so popular online because the thing about Belfast is it's like the crowd and the energy. Do you know, everyone talks about the acts, but also like one of the biggest acts is the atmosphere and the crowd. So yeah, I think they capture that really, really well, and people just absolutely love it.
And you've done events all over the world, so you know how special the Belfast audiences are.
Yes, and we have artists that just they're dying to play the festival because they want that experience. So yeah, I mean, it's totally different everywhere you go. But yeah, I mean, there's something very special about the energy here, I think.
Definitely. Tell us about some of the big events that you've worked on over the years. You've done Glastonbury, haven't you?
Yeah, I was assistant to a producer at Block 9, which is one of the fields at Glastonbury. They have 38, it's almost like 38 mini festivals. Glastonbury is like one big of 38. So yeah, I worked on that. So that was a big experience, an eye-opener for me before I started AVA, and I learned a lot through doing that, yeah.
You worked in Manchester as well?
Yep, I was in Manchester for 6 years, and I worked on MIF, Manchester International Festival. I worked with the Warehouse Project team as well, and then Man City, which has nothing to do with music, but it was a big sort of, you know, entertainment and obviously football, so that was an amazing experience too.
What about your background? How did you get into all this? Did you have to go and study, or did it just something you fell into?
I did both, really. I mean, I went to Manchester to study, and the reason why I picked Manchester, I mean, partly because of the course, but the music scene was so unique there, and like it was something that really excited me. So I went there, and so a lot of the jobs I was doing sort of alongside studying or alongside a job, you know, because with festivals and music, you really kind of have to get your boots on the ground and get your experience that way. So yeah, that was kind of across those years that I did that.
And is the music industry changing? Because for many years it was quite a male predominantly industry, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would say it's still quite a male predominant industry, like many industries, and I think it is really important that changes. And I think from the years that I've been doing this, when we started to where we are now, you know, a proud moment for me this year is it's females closing the main stage on our festival. That's never happened where both days are closed. So that's like a massive thing for us. You know, we've got Peggy Goo closing the Friday night, and then Orla and Sally, one's from Derry, one's from Belfast, are closing the Saturday night. So that's changing a lot on the artist side. But yeah, I think it's really important for role models, you know, and I hope that like me running a festival helps encourage the next generation of female organisers to take the leap. And it is changing for sure, it is changing. I wouldn't say it's the same as what it was when I joined, but yeah, always more space for more women, I think.
And it's great to see Belfast getting these events that kind of stands up with the rest of the world now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say AVA is seen as a sort of an international festival. We get a lot of international audiences. And having the broadcast part of that as well helps sort of push out the message much further. So yeah, it's great to see, and like, you know, me starting AVA was sort of born out of a want for something like this to happen here. So yeah, we've had really good support from the artists and from the city as well. Like the city's been really supportive, so onwards.
So this is going to continue, but is there something in your mind maybe down the line you'd love to do something a lot bigger or try to compete with this?
In Belfast?
In Belfast, yeah.
I wouldn't want to compete with it. I think just continue to grow it. You know, we're 10 years next year, so we're actually already in artist discussions for next year, which is mental, but that is the reality. So yeah, we've got some very exciting things planned already.
Brilliant. Okay, so it is back. Titanic Slipways, 2nd until the 4th of June.
Yeah.
If people want tickets, where do they go to for that?
So avafestival.com, you can buy a weekend ticket or a day ticket as well.
Okay, and I'm going to finish the show this week with one of your music videos.
Oh, brilliant.
Eliza Rose.
Love
That's
it.
your other alter ego, isn't it?
Yes, I will also be secretly performing at the festival. You just have to figure out which one.
Tell us about Eliza Rose then.
So she's a number one. She's one of the few females electronic artists who've been number one. So she, Baddest of Them All was her hit, and she's playing our Boiler Room stage on the Saturday.
Excellent.
So yeah.
We look forward to that. Sarah, thank you so much for coming in and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So there we go. That's all we have time for on the show this week. Going to play you out with Eliza Rose, and we'll see you back here same time next week. Bye-bye.